Do you want to level up your horsemanship and roping? What if small changes could bring real results without overcomplicating things? Welcome to the Ranch Horse Resource Podcast. I'm Ronda Van Norman.
And I'm Ty Van Norman.
This podcast is for folks who want practical horsemanship and roping tips, whether you're in the arena, on the ranch, or just trying to get better with your horse.
We're starting this podcast because Ronda felt like there's people that need to know what we've learned through generations and our own experiences and our own hard knocks.
We want each episode to be short, focused, and something that will fit in your schedule. You know, whether you're out feeding the horses, driving to a roping, or fixing fence, just little nuggets of tips and tricks. Daylight's burning. Let's go. All right, Ty, let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit more why you agreed to do this podcast, because it was probably not your first idea.
I don't know. It just seems like people have lots of questions about different aspects of riding, and it seems like between what we've learned and what we've grew up doing and stuff like that, it seems like it's getting lost for the younger generations and maybe even some of the older generations that never got to experience it. And there's interest in it. I'm not trying to impress anybody or anything like that. It's just another tool to put in your toolbox and to preserve some traditions that have been alive for a long time.
You know, for me, part of my philosophy is to always be learning and always find somebody you can pass what you do know on to somebody else. So you're always teaching and you're always learning. I think that's a really good way to live. But there's a lot of horse trainers out there, Ty, and a lot of different philosophies. Can you explain to the listener why your voice needs to be part of the noise?
Well, I don't know that it needs to be, but I think what we're seeing now, the horse industry is getting more and more specialized in certain areas, and there's less and less working ranches also. So you have those specialized events that are promoting their style of horse and their way of doing things. But with that, you have inside of that, you have people that are being made by those people, and they don't have a background in, I don't know about practical use of it, but the original use of why and how people did stuff with horses, or the style that they did with those horses. And sometimes in that specialized event that you start doing with your horse takes away from what it could be, because it puts pressure on what is expected for that event. And I think people need to know that they can go and ride their horse and still make a really nice horse that they can do all kinds of stuff on without having the whole specialized thing in there too, to make more of an all-around type horse. I think some people's horses get wasted just doing one event or one thing. And I shouldn't say wasted, it's their horse, but there's so much more potential. And what happens is it creates cliques too, where pretty soon the one group doesn't like the other group, and it's silly, because the horse was originally used for our service as far as that goes. Whether it was war or work or whatever. Now we've over the last, I don't know how many hundreds of years, we've started to slowly going back into entertainment, I guess, or recreation would be the better word for it. There are some really nice horses out there that didn't have to have all the pressure put on them as a 2 and 3 year old to become a really nice horse that people never do go to a show with, in my opinion. And there is, I don't know, I guess it's just my opinion on how to turn out a nice horse that you can go do anything you want to on. You might not be great at anything, and there's just some horses that are bred that way, that are made that way, that aren't great at anything, but they should be able to do quite a few things. And it's the part of bringing out that horse to his potential might not meet the standards of that specialized event, but it's still that horse's potential.
That's a really good perspective, Ty. Thanks for sharing. I think this podcast is really for anyone who wants to just get back to some foundational things that's going to help them with any type of horse they ride. Ty, I know that you have a long history of ranching and horsemanship. Do you mind giving us a little rundown of that?
My family's just been involved in that as long as I can remember. My great-grandparents, grandparents, we were in either ranching or some type of farming that's involved horses and cattle. So, and we just stayed in that. That was passed down, I guess, and it was passed down in not only the form of what we did, but also, we were, I guess, somewhere along the line, the family were seeking that type of thing instead of moving to town.
Give me a little bit of your horsemanship background from your grandfathers and your dad.
I don't know. They were just raised riding horses. The Great Basin area had quite a bit of Spanish vaquero style horsemanship introduced to it centuries, or I don't know, 100 years ago probably, or somewhere in there. And then there was a lot of other influences that came through this area just because it was a bigger ranching area between California and any other place you'd go to. So we didn't get a lot of the southern influence because Arnold Rojas wrote in one of his books that California had been sending cattle to Montana 50 years before the first cattle drive ever left Texas. So there was a lot of Spanish vaquero-style horsemanship and stockmanship being introduced to these states on your way into Montana before there was any southern influence from that style come this way. And so I guess that's probably the base of what our style of horsemanship, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you want to call it. A lot of people call it traditional, but I don't know if that's the best term for it. And then, of course, we lived in an area where there was people gathering here that were good horsemen, and then Tom Dorrance came into the country too and influenced. The Dorrance brothers were already in this part of the area working on ranches, but then Tom had a special knack with some horses, and he started showing people different things, different than what they were doing. And that became, I guess, a way of learning for the guys in the area. And my grandpa Charlie and my dad were probably one way or another influenced through that too. My grandpa Charlie seemed like, to me, of course, I was his grandkid, and I kind of looked up to him as far as that goes. So I don't know, a whole lot. I never saw him ride colts much, but my dad rode a lot of colts, and I grew up riding colts around him. But my grandpa always had an attitude, or he always made it seem like he was trying to figure the horse out more than dominate the horse himself. But where that influence came from, I don't know. Whether it was from Tom or from just his own personality or not. And then, of course, Ray Hunt, my grandfather on my maternal side, and he spent a lot of time with Tom, and then he started taking what he learned from Tom and spreading it to the rest of the world.
So basically, this has been part of your experience your entire life. Tell me a little bit more about what it was like growing up on the ranch and some of the different activities you did.
It's pretty much like every other ranch. We run, I don't know, 1,500 to 2,000 head of mother cows, depending on how dry the year was and stuff. But they were there year round. So I guess just a typical year, I don't know, pick apart where you want to start. I guess if you start at the first of the year, we're In the wintertime, we're feeding cows, and around February, we'd start all the colts that were on the ranch. Usually we're raising our own colts, so we'd have anywhere from 30 to 60 head of brood mares, and at that time growing up, we only had about 30 head of brood mares. We didn't start the broodmare bunch didn't get that big until after the 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. But so we were starting 20 to 30 head of colts. In February was the best time for us to start it because we were just feeding. Most of the fall works, even if they dribbled in after the first of the year, you could get most all that done. And February was the time to start the colts, and we'd put 15, 20 rides on each colt and turn them back out. And then about that time, March rolled around, and we'd trail all the cows from where they spent the winter about 30 miles down to another place to start calving. We'd split them all up in different fields where we could ride through them every day, and we're still feeding them, of course, in March. In that country, it's pretty snowy, so they would start calving a lot of times in March, somewhere in there. We'd head down there with them the 1st of March, and they'd start calving around the 10th or 15th, and so you'd calve cattle out down there and fight the elements and get to brand in the spring. We could turn out 15th of April, usually it wasn't until the 1st of May, but so we'd brand some calves, little calves, before we turned out, and we turned out a bunch that hadn't calved yet. Anyways, they'd go into BLM land, a mix of BLM and private, and they'd work their way all summer. We'd change allotments. We'd brand again in June and get everything we hadn't branded as baby calves. Change allotments all summer until they'd be on the other end of the ranch where we would be able to wean the calves and start the process over again. Start weaning calves and clean up branding and running cows through the chute and preg checking and all that stuff. That's about the time in the fall we'd take those 2-year-olds that we started in February. We'd start hauling them with us and riding them in the fall to do little jobs. And then later on, I'd wind up calving on mine when I wasn't in school. When I got out of school, as far as completely out of school, I didn't really have much time while we were in school. We were in and out. Dad was doing all this stuff with whatever hired men he had, and then my brother and I would fill in when we were home. And once we were home, I'd try to ride those colts in the fall in little jobs, and then carry it over into spring works and calving and stuff.
You've done a lot more with your horses than just ranch horses.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Ranching was something they always had to do. That was just something that if they couldn't go to work, then I don't know what use a horse was. And that, I guess, in a sense, sounds kind of harsh, but that was the main thing when my dad and grandpa started raising horses. They were raising horses that they could use first, that were beneficial to the ranch and all the aspects of what they needed to do on the ranch as far as handling the livestock. So they had to have some cow in them. Long before the snaffle bit fraternity ever showed up, there were little clubs in California that showed different types of stock horse stuff. But the Elko County Fair in Elko, Nevada was kind of a big place for all the big ranches, and whoever wanted to come, they really promoted the stock horse. So that still goes on today. So, and that's kind of where I guess it'd be similar to the reining cow horse world now as far as that goes. But eventually that was their goal, was to raise horses they could use on the ranch that were still durable enough to use on the ranch, but still handy enough to be able to do more of a stock horse type stuff in the arena too, which, they have to be handy enough to change leads and stop and turn around, which those styles have changed over the years, but still have enough cow to watch a cow. I mean, if they were too drafty type of horses, they were a lot slower and it just weren't as smooth and quick. So they might not have been as easy to get on a cow or easy to control a cow when you wound up in competition. On the ranch, I'm sure it was no big deal. But when you were wanting to compete against some other cowboys, I'm sure that's what started some of that stuff, started them trying to figure out what fits the arena the best. So as far as other stuff, yeah, we grew up ranching. Team roping wasn't real popular or wasn't really a thing when my dad was growing up, or he didn't make it sound like it was. But when my brother and I got to high school, we kind of started team roping. We learned some stuff from the neighbors that were about 10 years older than us and had gone to college, and they're kind of dabbling in the team roping. So by the time we got to junior rodeos and started going to junior rodeos and stuff, then team roping was kind of taking off. And so we'd take our ranch horses and what we'd learned, and if we wound up creating problems with our team roping, my dad was always there to try to to help us get through them with our horsemanship background. So and it just carried on. There's ranch roping we've done on them, team roping. We've taken the same philosophy and stuff from our horsemanship, and now that my girls are all through their high school and stuff, we'd never done barrels and poles, but we started taking that into the barrels and poles, and I don't know, they were fairly successful.
Ty, would you please tell the listeners a little bit about the Van Orman and Friends production sale?
Yeah, we have it. It started in 1997 was our first year, and that September. We've had it right around the third weekend in September since the very beginning. That just seemed to be a good time to have it. Dad didn't want to have it any earlier because he figured we'd be weaning the colts too early. Most of our colts are born in May and June. And it's right before our fall work starts, so there was kind of a gap between our local fair and our fall works needing to start, so that it was just a good time to have it, I guess. And it's been going on ever since then.
That's a lot of years in the industry, Ty. I'm sure you've had a lot of fun and learned a lot through the years.
Yeah. Before we started the sale, my grandpa would take people around, and they would look through the colts out on the range, and people would pick colts, and Grandpa sometimes would talk them out of getting a certain colt they liked because he didn't think he was pretty sure it wasn't going to fit. He was a good judge of character, I guess, and usually the colt that he picked out for him usually fit him really well, and they kept coming back. But after my grandpa passed away in 96, we kind of needed another way to market our horses, so we decided to try to have an annual sale, and it's kind of the same deal. We invited some of the neighboring ranches and guest consigners to have horses in it, and we tried to get a good match for people. They get a chance to watch us preview them. It's kind of hard to tell on the babies, but you kind of know if you know your mares and your stud and have rode any colts by them, you can kind of get a history on what you're raising a little bit, so that people come there and they ask you, about a colt and what they want to do with them. You can give them an idea whether that horse is going to have the temperament or the ability to do what they're thinking they want to do with it. I'm sure it's not as well matched as my grandpa would have probably given them, but it's been a learning curve anyways.
On a different note, Ty, can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of mindset and why we might be covering some of those topics in the podcast?
Our mindset is how we wind up expressing our emotions. And in horsemanship, a guy has to have control of your emotions in order to give that horse the best opportunity to be successful. So whether it's the horse or yourself, you have to be mentally conscious of your what's going on with inside yourself in order to gain control of the emotions that we wind up, that either the horse causes in us or we cause in the horse. So
that's an important part, isn't it? I know it's my goal to offer a few Cowboy Church Corner episodes, basically to encourage others to find the perspective in the big picture, to look at things from God's perspective and not get so caught up into how you're feeling at the moment. Easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely.
Ty, talk to me a little bit about your faith and why you would like to incorporate that into the podcast.
I just think it's important. I think it's honestly changed how I handle my horses and understand my horses too. When I started understanding more of who and how God created me and who I'm supposed to be in Him, it helped me understand or have more patience with the livestock, but my horses in general, for me anyways. And I just think it's important to me. I think, we're called to live a certain way but not everybody knows how to get there or knows what to do to get there.
I'm really looking forward to adding some Cowboy Church episodes to this podcast. I hope it's an encouragement for all the listeners out there. And we want to just not hide our hope in Jesus as our Savior, but to share it because it's life-changing. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect or even good. It just means that we have hope. So it's something that both Ty and I are very passionate about, and we're eager to share it. Well, thank you for listening. These podcasts are aimed at sharing just little snippets of tack room talk, from bits to breeding, roping, and riding. I think if you listen in every week and apply the little shifts, the small changes, that you will find the outcome quite rewarding. So be sure to follow the show so you can get the updates when a new episode is out. And go ahead and share it with a friend. Okay, my friends, we're out of here. Keep up the good work and don't let discouragement keep you out of the saddle. Bye for now.